The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. President stood in the command center of Earth's united government, watching the massive screen that dominated the entire wall. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, but everyone had stopped to listen. The voice coming through the speakers belonged to Ambassador of the Galactic Council, and his words carried the weight of an empire that spanned 10,000 star systems. "Humanity has been observed," said. His image filled the screen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes that held no warmth. "Your species has developed weapons that exceed the limits set by council law. Your colonies have spread beyond the boundaries assigned to you. These are serious violations." Kept her face calm, but inside her heart was beating fast. She had known this day would come. For 300 years, humanity had played the role of the obedient newcomer. They had smiled and nodded and followed the rules while the council treated them like children. But in secret, they had been preparing. "What does the council demand?" she asked. Leaned forward slightly. "You will destroy all weapons that exceed Class 3 power levels. You will abandon your colonies in the outer reach. You will reduce your fleet to no more than 50 vessels. And you will allow council inspectors to verify your compliance." A murmur ran through the command center, raised her hand, and silence returned. "And if we refuse?" she asked. Thin lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "The council has destroyed species before, President. 12 civilizations have been removed from existence for defying our laws. Humanity would simply be the 13th. Admiral stepped forward from his position near the back of the room. He was an older man with gray hair and a face marked by decades of service. When he spoke, his voice was steady and strong. "How long do we have to respond?" he asked. Turned his cold eyes toward the Admiral. "You have 30 standard days to begin compliance. After that, the Council fleet will arrive to enforce our demands. I suggest you use this time wisely." The screen went dark as the transmission ended. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of the younger officers said what everyone was thinking. "They want us to become helpless. If we give up our weapons and our colonies, we will have nothing left." Nodded slowly. "That is exactly what they want." She turned to face Admiral. They had known each other for 20 years. They had planned for this moment together, hoping it would never come but knowing that it probably would. The Council had always seen humanity as a threat, not because humans were stronger or smarter, but because they refused to accept their place at the bottom of the galactic order. Admiral said, "What is the status of Project Dawn?" Allowed himself a small smile. "We are ahead of schedule, Madam President. The shipyards in the hidden systems are operating at full capacity. We have been building for 120 years. Our fleet numbers in the thousands, and our weapons are unlike anything the Council has ever seen." "And our people, are they ready?" "They have been ready for a long time. Every man and woman in the military knows why we have been preparing. They know what the Council thinks of us. They know that we have been treated like lesser beings since the day we made first contact." Walked to the window that looked out over the capital city. Millions of people lived their lives below, unaware of the conversation that had just taken place. They trusted their government to protect them. They trusted that humanity would survive. "We built this civilization from nothing," she said quietly. "We crawled out of caves and learned to make fire. We crossed oceans and climbed mountains. We reached for the stars and found that we were not alone. And when we met the other species of this galaxy, they looked at us with contempt." She turned back to face the room. "They called us primitive. They laughed at our short lives and our fragile bodies. They gave us the worst planets to colonize and the smallest voice in their council, and we accepted it because we had no choice." "But that time is over," said. "Yes," agreed, "that time is over." She walked to the main communication console and pressed a button. Her voice would now be heard on every human world, on every ship, in every colony. "People of Earth and all human territories," she began. "Today, the Galactic Council has demanded that we surrender our weapons, abandon our colonies, and accept permanent weakness. They have threatened to destroy us if we refuse." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I am speaking to you now to tell you our answer. We will not surrender. We will not abandon our people. We will not accept a future where humanity exists only at the pleasure of those who see us as inferior." Around her, officers were standing. Some had tears in their eyes. Others were smiling with fierce pride. "From this moment forward," continued, "humanity will go silent. We will cut all communication with the Council and its member species. We will retreat to our territories and close our borders. And we will prepare for what comes next." She looked at Admiral and nodded. "The Council believes they know us. They believe we are weak and afraid. They believe that their threats will make us bow down, but they have never understood humanity. They have never understood that we do not surrender. We do not give up. We do not go quietly into the night." She ended the transmission and stepped back from the console. "Admiral," she said formally, "you have command of all military forces. Execute Protocol Silence." Saluted, "Yes, Madam President." Within hours, the orders went out. Every human ambassador in Council space was recalled. Every communication channel was shut down. Every border station went dark. Trade routes that had connected humanity to the rest of the galaxy were closed. The Council watched in confusion as humanity simply disappeared. Ambassador sent message after message demanding a response. He threatened and warned and promised terrible consequences, but his words vanished into silence. Earth did not answer. The colonies did not answer. It was as if humanity had simply ceased to exist. On the Council, the leaders of the 12 most powerful species gathered to discuss this strange development. "They are hiding," said Councillor Vell, a large being with 4 arms and orange scales. "They know they cannot fight us, so they have retreated to their little worlds to wait for death." "Perhaps they are preparing some kind of resistance," suggested another councillor, a floating creature made of light and energy. Shook his head. "What could they possibly prepare? Their fleet numbers fewer than 100 vessels. Their weapons are primitive. Even if they spent 1,000 years building, they could never match the combined strength of the Council." "Then we should destroy them now," Vell said eagerly. "Send the fleets, burn their worlds, end this problem before it grows." But the Council was divided. Some wanted immediate action. Others argued that humanity was no real threat and could be dealt with later. Resources were needed elsewhere. Other problems demanded attention. In the end, they decided to wait. They gave humanity 1 year to see reason, 1 year to realize the hopelessness of their situation, 1 year to come crawling back and beg for mercy. 1 year passed, humanity remained silent. 5 years passed, still nothing. The Council sent probes to the edge of human space. Some returned with images of normal activity, ships moving between planets, lights in cities, signs of life, but no communication, no response to any attempt at contact. 10 years passed, then 20, then 30. The Council gradually forgot about the humans. There were other matters to attend to, rebellions to crush, resources to claim, power struggles within the Council itself. Humanity became a minor note in old reports, a strange chapter in galactic history that seemed to have ended quietly. On the human worlds, a different story was unfolding. Admiral had grown old, but his work continued. Hidden in systems that no Council probe had ever discovered, massive shipyards worked without rest. Ships were built by the thousands, not the small vessels that the Council had seen, but warships of incredible size and power. Scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They developed weapons that the Council had banned, and then they went further. They created things that the Council had never imagined. President passed away 22 years after the silence began. She died knowing that her people would be ready. Her successor continued the work, and so did the leader after that. Each generation knew the truth. They knew that humanity was not hiding. Humanity was preparing. And when the time came, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of. In the command center, where had made her famous broadcast, a new generation of officers trained for a war they had never seen. They studied tactics and strategies. They learned to operate ships that dwarfed anything the Council possessed. They prepared for the day when humanity would return. And somewhere in the depths of space, far from any Council patrol, young Captain looked out at a fleet that stretched beyond the horizon of stars. He was the grandson of Admiral, and he had grown up hearing stories of the old days. Stories of how humanity had been humiliated and threatened. Stories of the great silence that had followed. "How many ships now?" he asked his second-in-command. The officer checked her console. 4,700,000 and counting. The new shipyard in Sector 9 just came online. Nodded slowly. "And the Council, any sign that they suspect?" "Nothing, sir. They stopped looking for us decades ago. They think we either died or became too primitive to matter." Smiled, but there was no joy in it. Only the cold satisfaction of patience rewarded. "Let them think that," he said. "Let them believe we are nothing. And when we finally show them the truth, let them remember this. Humanity never forgets." He turned back to the viewport, watching as another massive warship slid into position beside the others. The fleet filled space itself, blocking out the stars. The time for silence was almost over. The time for answers was about to begin. 50 years had passed since humanity went silent, and the galaxy had moved on. On the Council of Velar Prime, life continued as it always had. The great towers of the capital city reached toward the sky, filled with the bureaucrats and politicians who ruled over 10,000 star systems. Ships came and went from the orbital stations above. Trade flowed. Treaties were signed. Wars were fought and ended. And humanity was almost forgotten. Counselor Vel sat in his private office, reviewing reports from the outer territories. He was older now. His orange scales faded to a dull brown, but he still held power. He had outlived 3 council chairs and dozens of rivals. Survival was his greatest skill. A soft chime announced a visitor. Vel looked up to see his assistant enter the room. "There is a junior officer here to see you, Counselor. She says it is urgent." Vel frowned. He did not like unscheduled visits. "What does she want?" She would not say, only that it concerns the human territories. The word made Vel pause. Human. He had not thought about humans in years. They had become a minor problem that solved itself. Their silence had been interpreted as surrender or perhaps extinction. No one really cared which. "Send her in," he said. The officer who entered was young and clearly nervous. She was from one of the surveillance divisions, judging by her uniform. Her species was small and covered in soft fur, with large eyes that darted around the room before settling on Vel. "Counselor," she said, bowing deeply. "My name is, I work in the Deep Space Monitoring Division." "I know what your division does," Vel said impatiently. "You watch empty space and write reports that no one reads. What do you want?" Straightened her spine, finding courage somewhere. "Sir, I have been monitoring the borders of human space for the past 3 years. It is part of a routine survey program, and I have found something strange." "Strange how?" She stepped forward and placed a data chip on his desk. "May I?" Vel waved his permission, and she activated the chip. A holographic display appeared above the desk, showing a map of the galaxy. One section was highlighted in red. "This is human territory," explained. "As you know, we stopped sending probes there about 30 years ago. The last reports showed normal activity, but nothing of concern. However, I noticed some anomalies in the background radiation along the borders." Background radiation. Vel leaned back in his chair. You came to bother me about radiation patterns. Please, counselor, look at this. The display changed, showing a series of wave patterns. To Vel, they meant nothing, but pointed to specific peaks and valleys with growing excitement. These patterns are not natural. They are the result of massive energy expenditure, the kind of energy that would be produced by industrial activity on an enormous scale. The humans have factories, Vel said dismissively. All species have factories. Not like this. Pulled up a comparison chart. This is the energy signature of our largest shipyard complex, the one that builds capital ships for the Council fleet. And this, she pointed to another line, is what I am detecting from inside human space. The second line was much larger, much larger. That is not possible, Vel said slowly. I thought so too, so I ran the numbers again and again. I borrowed time on the long-range sensors without authorization. I cross-referenced with old data from before the silence. His voice was shaking now, but she pressed on. Counselor, the humans are building something massive, and they have been building it for 50 years. Vel stared at the display for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to his window. The city spread out below him, peaceful and prosperous. The Council had maintained order for 200,000 years. They had crushed every rebellion, absorbed every threat, eliminated every species that refused to submit. You are wrong, he said finally. You must be wrong. The humans were a young species, primitive. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel when we found them. There is no way they could build anything that would threaten us. But the data is wrong. Vel turned back to face her, his voice rising. Your sensors are faulty. Your calculations are incorrect. I do not know what is causing these readings, but it is not the humans building some secret fleet. Stood her ground. Then send a probe, send a ship. Let me prove that I am wrong. And waste resources on a dead species. No. Vel returned to his desk and deactivated the holographic display. The humans are gone, officer. They retreated into their little corner of space and died there. That is the end of their story. But what if it is not the end? What if they are still there, and what if they are preparing for something? Vel looked at her with cold eyes. I am going to give you some advice, young one. Forget about the humans. Forget about your readings and your theories. Find something else to study, something that matters. Because if you continue to spread these ideas, people will think you are unstable, and unstable officers do not have long careers. Wanted to argue. She wanted to show him more data, more evidence, but she saw the look on his face and knew that nothing she said would make a difference. He had already decided that she was wrong, and no amount of proof would change his mind. Yes, counselor, she said quietly, I understand. She retrieved her data chip and left the office. In the corridor outside, she paused and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking. She had spent 3 years gathering this information, checking and rechecking every detail. She knew she was right. Something was happening in human space. But no one would listen. In the months that followed, tried to share her findings with others. She went to her supervisors, who dismissed her. She wrote reports that were filed and forgotten. She requested meetings with senior officers who never responded. The Council had decided long ago that humanity was not a threat. That decision had become truth in their minds. Any evidence to the contrary was simply ignored. Meanwhile, the energy readings continued to grow. On the other side of the galaxy, far from Council space, the truth was very different from what Vel believed. General Sung stood on the observation deck of Station Prime, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible 50 years ago. Warships filled the void as far as the eye could see. They were arranged in neat formations, thousands upon thousands of vessels ranging from fast attack ships to massive dreadnoughts that measured kilometers from bow to stern. And this was only one of 12 major fleets. A door opened behind him, and a woman in a white coat entered. had been the lead scientist of Project Dawn for 30 years, taking over from the original team when they grew too old to continue. She was brilliant and tireless, and the weapons she had created were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "The new shield generators are ready," she said, joining him at the viewport. "We finished testing this morning. They exceed our projections by 18%. "Good news," Sung replied. "And the main weapon systems?" "Fully operational on all completed vessels. The plasma lances can punch through Council-grade armor like it is paper. The quantum torpedoes can destroy a capital ship with a single hit." She paused. "We have built weapons that the Council banned, and then we built weapons that the Council never imagined." Sung nodded slowly. He was old now, approaching his final years. He had dedicated his entire life to this moment. As a young man, he had watched the broadcast where President declared humanity's silence. He had felt the same pride and fear that everyone felt that day, and he had sworn that he would do whatever it took to make sure humanity survived. "How many ships do we have now?" he asked. "Across all fleets and all shipyards, we have approximately 7 million combat-capable vessels. Another 2 million are under construction." 7 million. Sung let the number roll around in his mind. When the silence began, humanity had fewer than 100 ships. Now they had enough to darken the skies of any world. "The question is," said carefully, "when do we use them?" It was the question that everyone was asking. The preparations were nearly complete. The ships were ready. The crews were trained. But the decision to end the silence, to reveal what humanity had become, that was a decision that would change everything. "The new president will make that call," Sung said. "President has been reviewing the strategic options. She believes we should wait a little longer, continue building, increase our advantage." "We could wait forever if we keep thinking that way." "We could, but we could also move too soon and lose everything." They stood in silence for a moment, watching a squadron of heavy cruisers glide past the station. Each ship was a marvel of human engineering, built with technologies that should have taken centuries to develop. But humanity had worked faster than anyone thought possible. They had worked with the desperation of a species that knew its survival was at stake. Back on the Council, Councillor Vel was having dinner with Ambassador. The Ambassador was ancient now, his gray skin wrinkled and spotted with age. He had delivered the original ultimatum to humanity 50 years ago, and he still spoke of it as one of his greatest accomplishments. "They simply gave up," said, sipping his drink. "I told them what would happen if they disobeyed, and they knew I was right. Their silence was their surrender." "Some of my officers believe otherwise," Vel mentioned casually. "There is a young analyst who thinks the humans are building something." Laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "Building what? They were barely capable of making simple spacecraft when I visited them. They could not build anything significant if they had 1,000 years." "That is what I told her." "You were right to do so. The humans are finished. Perhaps some of them still exist on their little worlds, living simple lives and telling stories of the time when they thought they mattered. But they will never threaten anyone again." Vel nodded and raised his glass. "To the wisdom of the Council." "To the wisdom of the Council," agreed. Far away, in the darkness between stars, Officer sat alone in her small quarters on a monitoring station. She had been transferred here after making too much noise about her findings. It was punishment for refusing to stay quiet. But she had not stopped watching. On her personal console, hidden from her supervisors, she tracked the energy readings from human space. They had continued to grow, month after month, year after year. And now, in the past few weeks, she had noticed something new. The readings were changing. The massive energy signatures were moving, shifting from fixed positions to something more dynamic. It was as if all that industrial power was finally being put to use. "They are coming," she whispered to herself in the darkness. "Whatever they have been building, they are finally ready to use it." She looked at the data again and felt a chill run down her spine. The council had no idea what was coming. They were too proud, too confident in their own power. They had dismissed the humans as nothing, and now they would learn the price of that mistake. Could try to warn them again. She could send another report, make another request for attention. But she already knew what would happen. She would be ignored or silenced or transferred somewhere even worse. So instead, she watched. She waited. And she wondered what the galaxy would look like when humanity finally showed the council what they had become. The answer would come sooner than anyone expected. And it would change everything. The story of how humanity built its fleet was a story of desperation, genius, and iron will. It began on the day of silence, when President made her broadcast and humanity closed its borders. Within hours, emergency orders went out to every colony, every station, every ship. The great hiding had begun. In those early days, Admiral worked without sleep. He sat in the command center for 72 hours straight, coordinating the movement of millions of people and thousands of ships. The Council had spies everywhere, and they needed to believe that humanity was simply retreating in fear. They needed to see exactly what they expected to see. Move the Fourth Fleet to the inner colonies, ordered. Make sure their sensor signatures are visible. Let the Council probes track them. And the real fleet, sir? His aide asked. The real fleet goes dark. No signals, no energy emissions, nothing. They head for the hidden systems through the cold routes. The cold routes were paths through space where no Council probe had ever ventured. They were long and dangerous, passing through regions of dead stars and empty void. But they were invisible, and that was what mattered. While the visible ships made a show of retreating, the secret fleet slipped away into the darkness. The hidden systems had been discovered decades earlier by human explorers who understood the importance of secrets. They were unremarkable places, stars with no valuable planets, regions with no strategic importance. The Council had mapped them once and never looked again. Now they would become the birthplace of humanity's revenge. Construction began within weeks of the silence. The first shipyard was simple, built from parts cannibalized from older vessels. It could produce one small ship per month. It was nothing compared to what the Council could build. But it was a start. General Park led the construction efforts in those early years. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped working. She had trained as an engineer before joining the military, and she understood what needed to be done. "We cannot match the Council in numbers," she told her team. "Not now, maybe not ever, so we need to match them in quality. Every ship we build must be worth 10 of theirs. Every weapon must be worth 100. The engineers worked day and night. They studied the Council's technology, which humanity had been quietly acquiring for centuries. They found the weaknesses, the limitations, the shortcuts that had been taken. And then they built something better. The first new warships rolled out of the hidden shipyards 20 years after the silence began. They were called the Defiance class, and they were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Their hulls were made of materials that the Council had deemed impossible to manufacture. Their engines were faster and more efficient than anything else in existence. Their weapons could punch through armor that was supposed to be unbreakable. Admiral was there for the launch of the first Defiance-class cruiser. He was an old man by then, his hair white and his body weak, but his eyes still held fire. "What will you name her?" someone asked. Looked at the great ship hovering before him, bristling with weapons and radiating power. "We will call her Remember, because that is what we do. We remember every insult, every threat, every time they looked at us like we were animals. And we will make them remember too." The Remember was the first, but she would not be the last. As the decades passed, the shipyards expanded. 1 became 10, 10 became 100, 100 became 1,000. They spread through the hidden systems like a growing web, each one feeding into the next, each one producing more ships than anyone would have believed possible. The secret was automation. Human engineers designed machines that could build other machines, factories that could construct factories. The process fed on itself, growing faster and faster. What would have taken centuries through normal methods took only decades. And while the ships were being built, the scientists were creating weapons. Smother was one of the original researchers on Project Dawn. She specialized in energy weapons, and she had a theory that everyone said was impossible. The Council had banned certain types of weapons because they were too destructive. They said such weapons could not be controlled, could not be used safely. Smother proved them wrong. The plasma lance was her creation. It generated temperatures hotter than the core of a star, contained within a focused beam that could cut through anything. When the first prototype was tested, it sliced through a Council-grade battleship armor plate like a knife through water. "How did you do it?" the other scientists asked. Smother smiled. The Council said it could not be done, but they never actually tried. They were so certain of their limits that they stopped looking for ways around them. Humans do not have that problem. We do not believe in limits. The plasma lance was just the beginning. Over the years, the weapons division created quantum torpedoes that could phase through shields. They developed pulse bombs that could disable entire fleets with a single blast. They built targeting systems so accurate that they could hit a ship from light years away. Each new weapon was tested in secret, far from any Council sensors. Each one performed beyond expectations, and each one was installed on the growing fleet. By the 40th year of silence, humanity had changed. The old fears were gone. The memory of being small and weak and threatened had transformed into something else. A new generation had grown up knowing that their people were building something incredible. They had trained their whole lives for a war that had not yet begun. Young was part of that generation. His grandfather was the legendary admiral who had commanded the Silence and overseen the beginning of the Great Construction. His father had served in the hidden fleets, protecting the shipyards from any threat, and now himself was rising through the ranks, proving himself worthy of his family's legacy. "You understand what we are preparing for?" his father asked him once when was promoted to captain. "I understand," replied. "We are preparing to show the galaxy that humanity will never bow. More than that, we are preparing to make sure that no one ever threatens us again, not the Council, not any species, not any power in the universe. When this is over, humanity will be safe forever." "Will it work?" His father looked at him with steady eyes. "It has to work. We have sacrificed everything for this. 50 years of hiding, 50 years of building, millions of lives dedicated to one purpose. If we fail now, all of that will be for nothing." Thought about those words often in the years that followed. He thought about them as he commanded his first ship, a sleek destroyer called the Unbroken. He thought about them as he trained his crew to perfection. He thought about them as he watched the fleet grow larger and larger. By the 50th year, the fleet numbered in the millions. 7 million warships, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts. 12 battle groups, each one capable of crushing the entire Council defense force. Weapons that could destroy planets if necessary, though everyone hoped it would never come to that. And finally, the leadership decided it was time. President called a meeting of all senior commanders. They gathered in the Great Hall of Station Prime, hundreds of admirals and generals and strategists who had devoted their lives to this moment. "The preparations are complete," said. Her voice was calm but carried to every corner of the hall. "Our fleet is ready. Our weapons are tested. Our crews are trained. The only question now is, when do we move?" Admiral, the oldest commander still serving, spoke first. "The Council grows weaker every year. Their member species fight among themselves. Their fleets are spread thin. If we wait longer, they may collapse on their own." "And if they do not collapse," General Sung responded, If they resolve their differences and turn their attention back to us, we would lose our advantage. There is another consideration, said Captain, who had earned his place in this gathering through years of exceptional service. Our people have been hiding for 50 years. How much longer can we ask them to wait? How many more generations must grow up in the shadows? The room fell silent at his words. Everyone knew the truth of them. The hidden systems were safe, but they were also isolating. Humanity had cut itself off from the rest of the galaxy to prepare for this moment. The longer they waited, the more they risked losing what made them human in the first place. President nodded slowly. Captain speaks wisdom. We did not build this fleet to hide forever. We built it to secure our future. She paused. I have made my decision. In 30 days we will end the silence. A murmur ran through the hall. After 50 years it was finally happening. We will not seek destruction, continued. We will not become the monsters the Council believes us to be, but we will show them our strength. We will show them that humanity is no longer the weak species they dismissed, and we will demand our rightful place in this galaxy. Admiral stood and saluted, for humanity. One by one, every officer in the room stood and repeated the words, for humanity. Captain felt his heart swell with pride. His grandfather had started this journey. His father had continued it, and now he would help finish it. In 30 days, the galaxy would learn the truth. In 30 days, humanity would finally answer the Council's long-forgotten ultimatum. And the answer would be written across the stars. The day began like any other on Velar Prime. The morning sun rose over the capital city, casting long shadows across the towers and spires that had stood for thousands of years. Ships moved through the upper atmosphere, carrying diplomats and traders and tourists. The council chambers opened for another day of debates and decisions. Everything was normal. And then everything changed. The first warning came from a monitoring station on the edge of council space. A young technician noticed an anomaly on his sensors, a disturbance in the gravitational fields that indicated something massive was approaching. He reported it to his supervisor, who assumed it was a malfunction. Run a diagnostic on the sensors, the supervisor ordered. They must be faulty. The technician ran the diagnostic. The sensors were working perfectly. Sir, he said, his voice shaking, this is not an error. Something is coming, something very large. Within minutes, similar reports came flooding in from monitoring stations across the sector. Gravitational disturbances, energy readings off the scale. Something was moving through space toward the council, and it was moving fast. Ambassador was in his chambers when the alarm started. He was very old now, barely able to walk without assistance. But his mind was still sharp, and when he heard the sirens, he knew immediately that something terrible was happening. A young aide rushed into the room. Ambassador, you need to see this. Please come quickly. They took him to the main observation deck of the council tower. A crowd had already gathered there, counselors, diplomats, officers, servants, all staring out the massive windows at the sky. At first did not understand what he was seeing. The sky was darkening, but it was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was something else entirely. Then his old eyes adjusted, and he understood. Ships, millions of ships, emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, spreading across the sky like a plague. They blocked out the sun itself, casting the capital city into shadow. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals, and weapons bristled from every surface. It cannot be, whispered. It is impossible. But it was not impossible. It was very, very real. Councillor Vell pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His orange scales had turned pale with shock. Where did they come from? Who are they? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the building flickered to life. Every communication channel was hijacked. Every display showed the same image. A young human man in a military uniform, standing on the bridge of a massive warship. "People of the Galactic Council," the man said. His voice was calm and clear. "My name is Captain. I speak on behalf of the United Human Federation." The room fell absolutely silent. 50 years ago, your ambassador delivered an ultimatum to our president. He demanded that we surrender our weapons, abandon our colonies, and accept permanent weakness. He threatened to destroy us if we refused. Captain paused, letting the words sink in. We refused. We went silent, and in the 50 years since, we have been preparing our response. The image shifted, showing the fleet from an external view. Ships stretched from horizon to horizon, blocking out the stars themselves. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons. Carriers filled with fighters. Battle cruisers with weapons that glowed with terrible power. What you see before you is a fraction of our strength. The first fleet numbers 700,000 vessels, but we have 12 fleets, and they are positioned throughout Council space as we speak. In the observation deck, someone started to cry. Someone else fell to their knees. Ambassador simply stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. "I want to be clear about our intentions," Captain continued. "We have not come to destroy you. We have not come for revenge, though we would be justified in seeking it. We have come to deliver a message." He leaned forward slightly, and his voice grew harder. "Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not submit. And humanity will never again accept threats from those who see us as inferior. You gave us an ultimatum 50 years ago. Now we give you one." The screen showed a document, terms written in the formal diplomatic language that the Council used for treaties. "You will recognize humanity as an equal member of the galactic community. You will return all territories that were unfairly taken from us. You will guarantee our security and sovereignty, and you will never threaten us again." Captain's eyes seemed to look directly at Ambassador. "You have 1 hour to accept these terms. After that, we will demonstrate what our fleet is capable of. We hope it will not come to that. We hope you will choose peace." The transmission ended. The screens returned to normal, and chaos erupted. Counselors screamed at each other. Military officers shouted into communication devices. Servants fled the building. The Council's carefully maintained order collapsed in seconds. Counselor Vell grabbed Ambassador by the arm. "You said they were finished. You said they could not build anything. You told us not to worry." Could not speak. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "We have to fight," Vell shouted. "Send the fleets. We have thousands of ships. We can destroy them." A military officer nearby shook his head. "Sir, our entire defense force numbers about 50,000 vessels. They have 700,000 in this fleet alone, and they say they have 12 fleets." "Then call our allies. The other species will help us." "Sir, the other fleets are already in position throughout Council space. Every major member world is under the shadow of human ships right now. No one is coming to help." Vell's orange scales flickered through several colors as the reality sank in. They were completely outmatched. All their power, all their confidence, all their certainty that they ruled the galaxy, it meant nothing against what humanity had built. In a quiet corner of the observation deck, Officer watched it all unfold. She had been transferred back to the year ago, and she had continued her monitoring work in secret. She had seen the human fleets beginning to move. She had tried one last time to warn her superiors. They had not listened. Now she watched as everything she had predicted came true. The Council was panicking. The military was helpless. And humanity was showing the galaxy what 50 years of preparation looked like. Captain stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Remembrance, named in honor of his grandfather's first ship. Around him, officers worked at their stations, monitoring the situation below. "They are panicking," reported his tactical officer. "Their military is in complete disarray, no organized response." "As expected," replied. They never believed we could threaten them. They never prepared for this possibility. Sir, what if they do not accept our terms? What if they try to fight? Looked out the viewport at the planet below. Millions of people lived there. Not all of them were responsible for what the Council had done to humanity. Most of them were just ordinary beings trying to live their lives. Then we will show them enough of our power to make them reconsider, but we will not become monsters. We will not destroy what we can preserve. He turned to face his crew. Remember why we are here. Not for revenge, not for conquest. We are here to secure peace, real peace, the kind that comes from strength, not weakness. The hour passed slowly. In the council chambers, the leaders argued and fought and blamed each other. Some demanded war. Others begged for surrender. A few tried to negotiate to find some middle ground. But there was no middle ground. Humanity had made their terms clear. As the deadline approached, the council chair, an ancient being of pure energy who had held the position for 300 years, finally spoke. "We have no choice," the chair said. "We accept the terms." "We cannot," Vel shouted. "We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled for 200,000 years. We cannot simply surrender to humans." "Look out the window, Counselor. Look at what they have built. They spent 50 years preparing for this moment while we did nothing. They have won. The only question now is whether we accept defeat gracefully or force them to destroy us." The vote was held. It was not unanimous, but it did not need to be. The majority agreed to accept humanity's terms. Captain received the news with a calm nod. He had hoped for this outcome. He had prepared for others, but he had hoped for this. "Open a channel to the surface," he ordered. "Broadcast everywhere." His image appeared again on every screen in council space. "The Galactic Council has accepted our terms. There will be no war today. No lives will be lost. Humanity has achieved what we set out to achieve, not through violence but through strength." He paused. "To the people of the Council worlds, we do not hate you. We do not wish to rule over you. We only wish to take our rightful place among the stars. For 50 years you forgot about us. You assumed we had disappeared, but we were here all along, watching, waiting, building." The transmission showed the fleet once more, that impossible armada that stretched across the heavens. "Remember this day. Remember what humanity is capable of, and know that as long as we exist, we will protect ourselves and our allies. The universe is vast enough for all of us. Let us learn to share it." The transmission ended. On the surface, Ambassador finally found his voice. "I delivered that ultimatum 50 years ago," he said to no one in particular. "I threatened to destroy them. I told them they were nothing." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And they spent 50 years proving me wrong." Officer stepped forward. The ambassador noticed her for the first time. "I tried to warn you," she said simply. "I saw the energy readings. I knew they were building something, but no one would listen." Looked at her with eyes full of regret. "No, we would not listen. We were too proud, too certain of our own superiority." He looked up at the sky, still filled with human ships. "And now we pay the price for that pride." Above, Captain ordered the fleet to stand down. The weapons were deactivated. The ships remained in position, a silent reminder of humanity's power, but they were no longer threatening. The first phase was complete. Now the real work would begin. The signing ceremony took place 3 weeks after the arrival. It was held in the Great Hall of the Council Chambers, a room that had witnessed treaties and declarations for 200,000 years. But nothing like this had ever happened within its ancient walls. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council was accepting another species as an equal, not through invitation, but through force. President represented humanity. She walked into the chamber wearing a simple black uniform, no decorations or medals, nothing to suggest arrogance or pride. Behind her came a small delegation of advisors and officers, including Captain. The council representatives sat in their traditional positions, a semicircle of seats arranged by seniority and power. But today, their faces showed none of the confidence they usually displayed. They looked tired, defeated. Some even looked relieved. The council chair rose to speak. "We are gathered here to formalize the agreement between the Galactic Council and the United Human Federation. The terms have been negotiated and accepted by all parties." The document was projected above the chamber for everyone to see. It was written in 17 languages, covering every species represented. The Galactic Council recognizes the United Human Federation as a sovereign entity with full rights and privileges. All previously disputed territories are returned to human control. Humanity will be granted 5 permanent seats on the Council, with full voting rights, and a mutual defense pact will be established, guaranteeing peace between all parties. President stepped forward. "We accept these terms, but I want to make something clear to everyone in this chamber." The room fell silent. 50 years ago, Ambassador came to Earth and threatened to destroy us. He told us we were weak, that we would be eliminated if we did not submit. Your council had already destroyed 12 species for refusing to bow. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each representative. Humanity could have become the 13th. She let those words hang in the air. Instead, we chose a different path. We went silent. We built. We prepared. And now we stand before you with the power to do to you what you threatened to do to us. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But we will not use that power for destruction. We will not become the tyrants that you were. Humanity did not build 7 million warships because we wanted to conquer the galaxy. We built them because we never wanted to be threatened again. She signed the document with a steady hand. This treaty marks a new beginning, not just for humanity but for everyone. The old ways, the threats, the ultimatums, the destruction of species who refuse to submit, those days are over. From now on, the galaxy will be built on mutual respect, not fear. The council chair signed next, followed by representatives of each member species. When it was done, the room erupted in carefully controlled applause. It was not enthusiastic, but it was enough. Later that evening, Captain walked through the streets of the council capital. The city was strange to him, architecture that had evolved over thousands of years, buildings made of materials he did not recognize, species he had only read about in reports. He had spent his whole life preparing for war. Peace felt unfamiliar. "Captain." He turned to find Officer approaching. He recognized her from the reports, the analyst who had detected their energy signatures, who had tried to warn the council. "Officer," he said, "I have heard about you. You were the one who saw us coming." She nodded. "I tried to tell them, they would not listen." "No, they were too proud." Looked up at the night sky, where a few of his fleet's ships were still visible, holding position in orbit. Pride is a dangerous thing. It blinds people to what is right in front of them. "What happens now?" asked. "Your fleet is still here. Your weapons are still ready. How do we know you will keep your word?" It was a fair question. Considered it carefully. "You do not know," he admitted. "You have no guarantee except our word, just like we had no guarantee that the council would keep its promises 50 years ago." He turned to face her. "But there is a difference now. Back then, humanity was weak. We had no choice but to trust that the council would honor its agreements. Now we are strong. We could take whatever we wanted by force. Instead, we choose to make peace." "Why?" "Because strength without wisdom is meaningless. Because power used only for destruction destroys the one who wields it. And because," he paused, searching for the right words, "because my grandfather started this journey hoping that his would live in a galaxy where humanity was respected. Not feared, respected. I want to honor that hope." Studied him for a long moment. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Conquerors, warriors, beings who would use their fleet to crush everyone who ever wronged them." Smiled slightly. "We could have been that. In the early days, there were those who wanted revenge, who wanted to burn the council worlds and make the galaxy pay for every insult, every threat, every moment of humiliation. But wiser voices prevailed. People like my grandfather, people like President who started all of this. What did they want instead? Safety, dignity, a future where humanity could grow and thrive without fear. That is what we built our fleet for, not to conquer but to protect. In the months that followed, the transition was not easy. There were those in the council who resented humanity's rise. They whispered in corners, plotted resistance, tried to find ways to undermine the new order. But the human fleets remained in position, a constant reminder of what humanity could do if pushed. And slowly, attitudes began to change. Young beings from council species visited human worlds for the first time. They saw cities built with strange beauty, technology that approached problems in ways no one else had considered, art and music that moved them in unexpected ways. They went home with different opinions than their parents held. Human traders opened new routes, bringing goods that no one had seen before. Human scientists shared discoveries that advanced fields that had been stagnant for centuries. Human diplomats worked patiently to build relationships that had never existed. Captain was promoted to admiral. He commanded the First Fleet, now permanently stationed at the border between human space and council territory. It was a peaceful posting. There was no one left who would risk attacking humanity, but it was an important one. The fleet's presence reminded everyone of what had happened and what could happen again if anyone forgot. 1 year after the signing, received a visitor on his flagship. Officer had resigned from council service and joined the Human Diplomatic Corps. She had become one of the first non-human citizens of the Federation, a symbol of the cooperation that both sides were trying to build. "Admiral," she said, sitting across from him in his private quarters, "I have a question that I have wanted to ask since the day you arrived." "Ask." "Your grandmother, President, she started all of this when she refused the Council's ultimatum. Did she know? Did she know that humanity could build what you built?" Thought about it. He had asked himself the same question many times. "I do not think she knew for certain," he said finally. "I think she hoped. She believed that humanity could achieve great things if given the chance. She trusted that the people who came after her would find a way, and she was right. She took an enormous risk." Yes, but what was the alternative? Accept slavery, watch humanity become nothing more than servants to those who look down on us. My grandmother believed that some things were worth risking everything for. Freedom was one of them. Dignity was another. Nodded slowly. "I understand that now. When I first saw your fleet, I was terrified. I thought you had come to destroy us, but instead you offered peace." Peace was always the goal. The fleet was just the tool to achieve it. A very large tool. Laughed. Yes, perhaps larger than necessary, but my people had been afraid for a very long time. They needed to know that they would never be afraid again. Outside the viewport, stars drifted past. Somewhere out there, human colonists were building new homes on worlds that had never known human footprints. Scientists were exploring phenomena that no one had studied before. Artists were creating works that would inspire generations to come. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was finally free to explore it. "What do you think the future holds?" asked. Considered the question. "I think the future holds whatever we make of it. That was true 50 years ago when my grandmother made her choice. It is true now." He looked at with steady eyes. The Council ruled through fear for 200,000 years. Humanity could have done the same. Instead, we chose a different path. Whether that path leads to lasting peace or eventual conflict depends on the choices that all of us make every day. Do you believe it will work? Do you believe peace can last? I believe in humanity's ability to build things that seem impossible. I have seen it with my own eyes, and I believe that other species can learn to see us as partners instead of threats. He smiled. My grandmother believed that too. She died before she could see this day, but I think she would be proud. Stood to leave. At the door she paused. Thank you, Admiral, for choosing peace. Nodded, thank you for giving us a chance. After she left, sat alone in his quarters looking out at the stars. His grandfather had started this journey. His parents had continued it, and now it fell to his generation to shape what came next. The Council had called humanity primitive. They had said humans were too young, too weak, too insignificant to matter. They had threatened to destroy everything that humanity had built. But they had been wrong. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had not been broken. Humanity had risen from the shadow of extinction to become the strongest power the galaxy had ever known. And now, for the first time in their history among the stars, humanity was truly free. Admiral made a silent promise to the memory of all those who had sacrificed to make this possible. He would protect this peace. He would guard this freedom. And he would make sure that humanity never forgot what they had learned. The universe was vast, the future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity would face it together, and they would never bow again.